Hey guys, welcome back to the 8th part in this Django Web Framework for Python series, and in this one we're going to be talking about building the fully functioning login system, and I'm going to show you how to do that from start to the point where you're going to have a working login form, although I can't actually show you it working yet, but we're going to get that foundation for the complete working login system by utilising some of the login information that Django's already written for us in the framework. So to get started, I'm just going to go into my urls.py and I'm going to import something else which we're going to use to power the views that we're going to use for this login system. So I'm going to do from django.contrib.auth.views import login. So what this is going to do is it's going to go to this place in the Django Web Framework and it's going to get this login function. It's going to create a login view to power that login web page, and then what we're going to do is create the URL for it. So I'm going to do URL just like the one above, and then I'm going to define a regular expression for that. And so we're already in the accounts app, which means it's going to be /account. I want it to say login / and then the $sign means end the regular expression. So we also need a caret there to say the start. So now what we want to do is say login. So that's going to be the view that it's going to go to, which we've imported here. It's just going to utilize that. And then what we're also going to do is define what template we want to render. So in the instance above where we said views.home, we then went to the views file and we defined this template here. But what we are going to do here instead is, because we haven't got access to this views, we're just importing it from somewhere else. It means we haven't defined what template it's going to point to. So to do that, we're going to pass in a dictionary, and there's going to be a key which is going to be called template name. And this is important to call it that because it knows then that whatever goes here is going to be the name of the template it needs to render, instead of the default one, which is registration /login.html, I think. So instead what it's going to render is accounts /login.html. So what that allows us to do is render our own login page rather than one we'd have to create at the default location, which would be a registration folder and then login.html. So that just fits with the login file that we've already created. So let's go ahead and see what we get when we run this. I'm going to do python manage.py run server. So it's successfully running the development server now. I'm going to refresh and it's rendered the home page because we're on /account, which is the URL we defined for that home view. So if we look at our URLs, it's going to go to here, and then it's going to say, okay, /account, look at accounts URLs, and then it's going to start and then stop, so it's just /account, and then it's going to views.home, so we get this view. But what we want to do is go to the other view. So if we look back at the URLs, it's /login. So I'm going to go to /login, and now we get the same login form, but it's being rendered by this view, which is very useful because what it means is that it's actually given us access to a login form. All we have to do now is present that in the template. So I'm going to go to the login.html, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty much render this template. So now that we've rewritten the base.html in the last video, I'm going to sort of change this HTML file and the home.html file just to make it less cluttered, so streamlining this code. So in the base.html we've already got these HTML and head and body tags, and then all we need to do is add the content within these blocks in the other HTML files. So we don't even need any of this stuff. So I'm going to get rid of all this, including the doc type. We don't really need that unless you're supporting sort of old browsers, which might need it. But I don't really care about that because I'm using Chrome. If you do, that might be something to bear in mind. But I'm going to delete all these tags which we've already got in the base.html because we don't really need them. And I'm just going to specify the blocks, so the head block and the body block. And that's going to be fine for the home. I'm just going to double check that still works. So we can go to account and we still get the home page. And in the body, I'm just going to leave it like that as well. So I'm going to keep this one quite simple, but in the login.html, I'm going to do a similar thing. So this was just a quick example to show you how we could pass the data through, but we don't really need that anymore. And I'm going to go to login.html to see what we have at the moment. And I'm just going to delete this because we don't really need that. And I'm going to do the same thing that we did in the home. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the home.html, and I'm going to do extends base.html so that it uses that base HTML, which means we have access to those blocks we've defined. So I'm just going to use the body, and I'm going to say block body. So again, this is replacing the block that is going to be in the base.html. So it's going to take this block and it's going to replace it with the one in login.html. And I'm going to do end block. So everything that we're going to do is now going to go inside this block. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to specify a little header here. So I'm going to say h1, and similar to what we've got here, I'm going to say welcome, and I'm going to add a paragraph just to say you can log in here, just sort of recreating what we've got here. And I'm going to say h2, and I'm going to say login. So then below this we're going to have the form, and to do a form in HTML I'm going to say form, and I'm just going to say method equals post. I don't need any of that for now. And inside here, what Django requires is a cross-site request forgery token. And what that means is it's just going to make sure that the data that we're submitting through that form is going to be secure, and that it's less susceptible to any sort of malicious things going on the internet, like people trying to hack into our login system. So to do that, and this is required by Django, otherwise it won't log you in, it will just give you an error. It's going to say CSRF for cross-site request forgery token. So all I'm going to do for this form is I'm going to pass in to this template something that was from the view that we haven't defined. That was something that we imported. So from that login view, something that's passed to this template automatically for us is a form, and I'm going to render that as a paragraph, so as _p. And what that form is it's going to be the username and password and the opportunity for the user to enter that. And that's all it is really at the moment. So we can refresh that, and now we see we've got the fully functioning login system with the bootstrap on it. So the bootstrap was from the base.html, and we've also got that form as a paragraph. So you don't really need to worry about what the as paragraph means at the moment, but the important thing is that we've got a username and password box, but at the moment we've got no login button. So I'm going to add a button, and I'm going to say type is submit, so submitting the form on this page, and we don't really need the name, that's not important, but I do want to call it login. So you can press the login button. So now we've got a button, and that's all we have to do to be able to create that login page. So we've got username and password and a login button. So all I'm going to do, just to shift this off the edge slightly, is I'm going to create a div tag and put all the contents inside it. So I'm going to say div, and I'm going to say the class is equal to a bootstrap thing, which is going to be container. You might have seen this in a previous video. And I'm going to close that tag off as well. So now we should see it's just shifted in slightly and it looks a little bit better. So we've now completely finished the functionality of this login page. All we've got to do now is create a user to be able to log in with. And to do that, we're going to talk a bit more about the databases, which is what I'm going to talk about in the next video, and how to use that in relation to the login system to be able to manage users and do some really cool stuff with the database.